listening to the Betmaker Show. This is the NFL Week 4 preview for Monday, September 23rd, 2019. And now, live from Las Vegas, the host of the Betmaker Show, Brian Blessing.
All right, folks, hope you had a wonderful weekend, and we are in a rhythm and a groove now. 3 NFL weeks in the book. Save the Monday night game, but one of our Monday treats is to always look ahead, and we call on our man, Jack, the top dog at Bookmaker when it comes to putting these numbers out for the NFL. Interesting Sunday night, Monday morning, Jack. There were some bizarre games.
There were, for sure.
You always try to look ahead and get a read on what's going on, maybe some injury notes, things we have some questions on. But let's just dive right in and get after it. Actually, a really good game on Thursday night with Philly and Green Bay. And we're looking at the Packers, a 4.5-point favorite. Total on the game is 46.5. I got to be honest with you, Jack. You know, Green Bay takes care of business against Denver. The Eagles lost to Detroit. People are like, whoa, how about the Lions? But what's wrong with the Eagles? You know what? That one was kind of low-hanging fruit. When you go back about 10 years, Pittsburgh would play teams, and it was like a 3-year run. The teams that played Pittsburgh the following week just had an atrocious record straight up and against the spread because Pittsburgh was so physical. Then Seattle turned into that team for about a 2-3 year run where they beat teams up, and the week after, they had nothing left in the tank. That's no great shock what happened to the Eagles, honestly. When you go back to the Monday night game against the Falcons, I mean, their plane going home was basically an ambulance. They got beat up in that game against Atlanta, and they paid for it the following week.
Well, proof of that was the line early in the week was 7 before all the injuries came out, and then it shot down to 4 by game time. And also, Philadelphia didn't play that poorly. They outgained Detroit. The problem was the 2 turnovers and a kickoff return. That'll
do it every time. Turnovers and special teams can be a difference. So in essence, then, they're going against a good Packers team here. In no way, shape, or form is your opinion diminished about the Eagles. I mean, there were some really quirky things that happened in that Lions game.
There were, but I mean, let's say if we put this on paper and we had Green Bay 3, in hindsight, we probably should have opened at 4 because of the injuries.
Well, that was going to be my question to you, because other than a quarterback, I mean, you've got to be one of the best players in the game. It would be, something along the lines of, I don't even know who would be like the most dominant wide receiver. I mean, maybe a Beckham for the Browns. He means that much to him. Like Tyreek Hill, he goes out with the Chiefs, and they've got a bevy of guys. There's no drop off there. But so there's no impact to the number for a skill position guy other than a quarterback. But when you've got a bevy of injuries like the Eagles had, it's in the back of your mind, right? Oh, they're a beat up team, but to put a number on it, what is that worth in relation to the spread? That's the hard call for you guys, to hang a number and then let the market decide.
Yes, it is. It's not that any of these one players impacts a line. It's the cluster of injuries that has to accumulate to where you have to make some compensation.
And to me, I always try to figure this out when I see something like that. That what is the correlation, when it comes to the total? I mean, okay, yeah, oh boy, those 3 or 4 guys out. Oh, their offense won't do anything. But the whole thing is because certain guys are out, pace of play or things that could happen completely change. I think the Giants deal, knock on wood, got one goofy one right. And that was. Listen, I don't know. We don't know that it's a drop-off. I didn't think it was a drop-off. And actually said maybe it is an upgrade with Jones coming in there simply because Manning was a pylon, and said the one thing I was pretty convinced would happen in the Giants game is there are going to be points everywhere because the kid will make plays with his feet. He'll make some mistakes. So more than anything, yeah, the Giants have a sense of belief, but their pace of play is a completely different animal now.
Right. It's just a question of seeing it. In other words, the Giants weren't scoring that much on offense, and you didn't know how much to raise the total for Jones being in there. Would he perhaps have a few more turnovers than Manning, which really is difficult to do the last couple of years? And again, in hindsight, we should have had that total higher. People bet it over, and they had the winner.
All right, let's move on to the Sunday games. The Chargers are at Miami, laying 16.5. The total on the game is 45. Again, this is just a function of how crazy this season is. This is a bad football team. There were some signs of life with Rosen at the helm, but this team's a dog's breakfast. Jack, did you ever in your wildest dreams think you would see a West Coast team traveling cross-country to play a breakfast football game, which is usually a big problem, to go on the road almost laying 17 points?
No, I never pictured it in my wildest dreams. I wouldn't have pictured it going into the season that Miami would be this bad. And actually, they hung well for the first half yesterday. It was a game. It was 10-6. And when we put the second half number up, it was 10.5, and some smart guys took it right away. But they did collapse in the second half.
And at some point, right, the odds maker's goal, this is what we love doing here. We get your side of the counter, and we try to cover both sides of the counter. But at the end of the day, when this season is all over, your goal for the Miami Dolphins, as bad as they are, and basically the New England Patriots, your goal is for them to be 8-8 against the spread and 8-8 over/under. In a perfect world, that's what the odds maker's trying to accomplish. So at some point, the Dolphins are going to step up to the plate, and the right level is going to be found here. So I look at this and think maybe it's a touch on the high side. The bad news for Miami is if the Chargers were coming off a win, I'd definitely be thinking about Miami. But the Chargers having lost, it's going to be a team probably not in a real good mood.
However, the Chargers losing again. They blew the lead as they did against Detroit, and their defense is quite suspect. And Rivers is putting up points, but at the key moments, they're making very important mistakes, and that should catch up with them. And when you talk about making the line, the question you have to ask yourself is, where do you think this will end? And I would think this would end closer to 14 than 17.
Yeah, I'm on board with you. I think that will come down a touch. Oakland and Indianapolis. Colts are 6.5. The total here is 44.5. Colts are a decent football team. Brissett's, serviceable. He's fine. He's not Andrew Luck, but don't forget on the draft, all the work they were doing was to build up a defense because they thought they were cruising with Andrew Luck. But there's a well-rounded, well-coached football team. Hilton got nicked up in that game. I think that's something that bears watching. The one thing, I guess, from the odds maker's perspective, Jack, when you're trying to gauge what you're dealing with here, Oakland went on the road, and they got eaten alive by Minnesota. The running game just crushed the Raiders. But what the Raiders are, the dichotomy home and away, are you still trying to figure that out?
Well, they opened on, I believe it was a Monday night game against Denver, and they beat Denver, and we all thought that was a good sign. Now Denver's sitting there at 0-3, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And perhaps it wasn't that good a victory. Kansas City, they came out, jumped out 10-0, and then were never in the game again. And then the performance yesterday was terrible. They're giving up too much yardage. Their defense isn't that good, and their offense is pedestrian at best.
What have you figured out through 3 weeks when it comes to Indy, who's 2-1 after the punch to the gut with Andrew Luck, and a lot of people thought, that's the end of them. I think in the division they reside, they're right there in the hunt. They're 2-1, and their only loss was a game against the Chargers on the road in the opener that, frankly, if it weren't for the kicking game, they'd have won.
They'd have won. It went to overtime, and they lost it. So they haven't lost in regulation yet.
What have you done with their power rating? Let me just ask, from week 1 to now, have the Colts gone up in your estimation?
In my estimation, I would have had them probably at 7 under something on regular season wins, and now I would have them at 8.
Kansas City's at the Lions. Good for the Lions. They're 2-0-1 and gave the way. Everybody's just so quick to say, it's the Lions. You know what? Give Arizona credit. Arizona went down the field, got a touchdown at the end. Fitzgerald made a couple of great plays. They get the 2-point conversion. No one scored in overtime. But these guys are 2-0-1. But KC comes strutting in here, laying 7. Total on the game is 54. This Kansas City offense Jack, it's a video game.
It is. It's rare. Yesterday, they were actually challenged where they had to play a second half. They didn't have to against Oakland, and they shut it down. They didn't have to against Jacksonville, and they shut it down. When they're forced to play a whole game, it's if they played 60 minutes every week, they would probably average in the 40s on offense.
For outstanding information and special offerings and promotions, we invite you and encourage you to sign up for our newsletter today simply by going to the website at Betmaker.com. It's crazy. The game of the week, we've got a spread of 7.5. New England's on the road, laying 7.5 at Buffalo. Total on the game is 43.5. New England hasn't played anybody. New England's on cruise control. Looks really good again. The Bills, you sit there and say, well, wait a minute. They beat the Giants and the Jets, not setting the world on fire. And they beat the Giants with Manning playing, but won both road games. And then murdering Cincinnati. One bad play by Josh Allen changed all the momentum. To the kid's credit, he takes them down the field after they fell behind, took them down the length of the field like the bad thing had never happened. And then the defense saved the day at the end. So Buffalo walks in here 3-0, and that was a look-ahead spot. And in the second half, they're up 14-0. They were looking ahead to New England. Well, careful what you wish for, because here they come. But New England comes in here a little banged up with some question marks. Edelman and Josh Gordon could be nicked up. The Antonio Brown soap opera's finally over. What was the thought process here, Jack, on making it the hook? I thought it would be 7. What's the thought process with the 7.5?
The 7.5 was placed there by the money when the game opened up. We opened it up 6.5.
Wow. Okay.
Went to 7 basically on air. And when you think about this game, Allen will make the key mistake. Now, will they cover 7.5? I couldn't tell you. The game will probably come back to 7, 6.5 by game time. But their defense is great. They're getting over 2 turnovers a game. Unfortunately, they're turning it over twice a game themselves. They can't do that. Allen let them back in that game. That was 14-0. He threw a ridiculous interception that set up Cincinnati. That's a game they should have handled easily all the way and probably covered.
There's no doubt. I mean, believe me, that would have ruined the Bills' season. They can afford, honestly, this loss now. Had they blown the Bengals game, that could have had a decimating impact on their entire season. The one thing is, and I don't, you got to focus on the now, but in the games last year, and basically this entire Buffalo defense is there. Buffalo's defense really throttled Brady and frustrated Brady. The good news for the Bills is in both of those games last year, or the home game, for the Monday night game, Allen did not play. And I think had Allen played in the Monday night game at home last year, the Bills would have beat him. But this is basically Buffalo jumping on a stage here on the spotlight now to see if anybody really is going to push these guys this year.
It is a spotlight game for them. But in your mind, who do you think wins the matchup, Allen or Belichick in the defense? Who's gonna crack?
There's no doubt. I mean, I think it is a different Buffalo team. The one thing I will say, Rob Gronkowski grew up 2 miles from the stadium at Orchard Park, and every time the Patriots come strutting in there, Gronkowski would eat them alive. The Patriots, as good as they look, Jack, it's still life after Gronkowski. New England hasn't. It's no one's thinking New England isn't good, right? New England's terrific, and they're going to be there again at the end. Who knows? My God, they may even be in the Super Bowl at the end. It's the defense that's phenomenal. But life after Gronkowski, when they face quality, remains to be seen.
It is. I mean, their record is 3-0. They're giving up less than 200 yards a game. I mean, that's phenomenal.
It is.
Actually, they're putting up the normal stuff on offense. And again, like Kansas City, this offense isn't being tested because it's jumping out to an early lead. And although Belichick never takes his foot off your throat, they back it up just a little. So they could be doing better on offense even.
All right, bud, you're a better man than me. Figure this one out. These are 2 teams that I swear to you, 1 week to the next, I have no clue what you're dealing with. Tennessee's at Atlanta. Atlanta's laying 4, totals 46. Mariota, at times, you wonder how he's even on an NFL team. And then he does some really, really good stuff. but they've got the workhorse running back in Henry. This Atlanta team, home and away, Jack, I think you can set your clock to it. They're good at home, and they're just horrible on the road.
Right. They got off on the wrong foot yesterday against Indianapolis. Made a nice comeback, made it a threat, but not enough. I think being at home, I don't see this number moving too much. I don't see it going below 3.5 or above 6. So I think we hung this one pretty good. Tennessee put up a terrible show on Thursday night. They do get the extra rest, which is worth a little something. The rain, I don't know if it affected them. And if you look at the final numbers, Tennessee outgained them, but Jacksonville outplayed them most of the game.
The one thing with Atlanta, and it's the nature of the beast. It's why you make the big money. And then Ryan gets in the red zone and makes a throw that a high school quarterback wouldn't make, and it drives you nuts. So Ryan's always the focal point when you talk about Atlanta this, Atlanta that. Their defense is Swiss cheese.
I when they played against Philly, I thought they had enough pressure on them that they may have improved, but I was wrong.
Seattle and Arizona. Seattle's laying 4 on the road. Total on the game of 47. The Seattle team got a little comeuppance, didn't they? Get full marks to New Orleans, and we'll get to the Saints in just a little bit. This will be, I would say, fun to watch Russell Wilson and Kyler Murray running around making plays. Seattle didn't win that game, Jack, but I will tell you something. Russell Wilson's amazing.
He is. He, especially in the second half when things look dire, he just rises to the situation. I mean, they had 515 yards on offense yesterday to the 265 for New Orleans. But again, turnovers, big mistakes, not making the big play. It happens as it did yesterday, and it came out New Orleans' way. You play it again, and again, Seattle's still like a 4-point favorite at home, even if you had the rematch today.
What do you make of Arizona as you're trying to get a read on a new coach and a new quarterback?
I don't think he gets enough net yards per pass. They had some key drops on him yesterday, which would have helped them. The defense is terrible. They're a very sub-500 team. I think they were fortunate, caught the momentum in that 18-point comeback against Detroit. They played respectably against Baltimore, and then they put on a terrible performance yesterday, and I think there's more of that to come. Wow.
People are going to pay for this one. Jacksonville at Denver. Denver's 3. The total on the game is 38. Denver's offense is abysmal. The Jacksonville Jaguars are literally a traveling soap opera. Best of luck to you. And the total's telling, because where are the points coming from?
Right. And that's a good question. I mean, Flacco is just prone to those big mistakes, which is one of the reasons Baltimore gave up on him. He doesn't see this guy coming from here and gets the ball knocked loose in a big situation. Not that it doesn't happen to every quarterback, but it seems to happen more frequently to him. I think that they're the better. I think they are better than Jacksonville overall, and I think they take the money in this one, and I think it closes around 3.5, 4.
All right. And the one thing to watch, right, is Minshew on the road. This is a young kid with some swagger, and good for him. A 6th-round pick that, he sure acts like he belongs out there. Give him full marks for that. I mean, he looks the part.
Oh, he does. And the problem with Denver so far is their defense has created no turnovers. I mean, offensively, defensively, they're outgaining their opponent, but they've turned the ball over 4 times, and their opponents have yet to turn it over. And you can't win like that.
All right, then we get to Dallas and the Saints. The Sunday night game, Dallas a 3-point favorite. Total on the game is 46. I thought the Saints showed a lot of back class in that game with Seattle. The one thing I would just be cautious of, listen, New Orleans went out there, and frankly, the week before the same thing happened. They should have had the defensive touchdown against the Rams. And honest to God, I think they had a shot to win that game against the Rams, and they were victim of the Breeze injury and victim of a horrible call. This defense did it again, putting points on the board against Seattle. The thing is, Jack, you can't count on that every week.
No, you definitely can't. They're sitting at 2-1. I think they're pretty lucky to be there. I mean, they're being outgained. They have no advantage in turnovers. They're hoping to hang around 500, maybe a game above, till they get Breeze back, and then they can make their move if Breeze comes back healthy and he can pick it up as if he had just gone through training camp again. So that's their objective. and they did a great job towards obtaining that objective by winning yesterday on the road at Seattle. We'll see what happens, but I think they're going to have their hands full with Dallas.
There's no doubt. The one thing I would just throw out there is the Cowboys. It looks great. They don't make the schedule. They play the Giants, Redskins, and Dolphins.
Right.
I mean, this is a much deeper pool they're swimming in.
Oh, you may make a very good point there. This will be their best opponent to date. However, they do have the fortune of running into Bridgewater, who, again, he didn't set the world on fire yesterday. He wasn't terrible. He was 19 for 27 for 177 yards, but 177 yards in today's passing era. I know they were nursing a lead. Perhaps he could have done better, but I'm not sold on him.
And then, well, Cincinnati maybe, but we get a Monday Night Football game, a pair of 0-3 teams. Wow, Pittsburgh 4.5. Total on the game is 43.5. I will say this, this Pittsburgh team, they still show some fight. Let's just throw that out there. But boy, in a million years, they didn't see 0-3 in their future.
No, they didn't. I mean, here's the thing. They lost by 4 points yesterday to a team who committed 3 more turnovers than them. And your winning percentage in games where your plus 3 turnovers is like 99%. So that was a very difficult loss.
Could you make the case the Bengals have looked like a better 0-3 team, to be honest with you, than the Steelers? They fought hard at Cincinnati, rallied, showed no quit in the game at Buffalo. I mean, some good things have actually happened there. They just at times fall asleep for long stretches of games.
Well, there is the inequity of they went into Seattle, outgained Seattle, but had more turnovers and lost the game. Mm-hmm. And yesterday, Seattle outgained New Orleans, but they committed the turnovers and they lost the game. And generally, that's what it's going to come down to. So, yes, they had a good game in Seattle, or a decent game. They lost by 1. They had the bad game against Frisco. And as I said, I don't think they get back in the game yesterday if Allen doesn't throw that 1 interception when they were up, when they were down 14-0. So if I had to, and Dalton, he just doesn't look the same on the road when he goes out there overall in his career. So I would be a proponent for Pittsburgh.
Full marks to you, Jack, because with all the games you got to watch, I mean, and you're on top of it and you're all over it. And you're right about one play in a game. Like for a total, like a team drive all the way down the field and fumble at the 1. It changes the demeanor of the entire game. The Allen makes that one throw across his body. Cincinnati gets an interception. All of a sudden, a team that literally was probably seconds away from running for the bus, you got a whole sense of purpose and a whole new life out of it because of one play.
Right. And that's what happens. That's the difficult part about gambling and laying 11-10.
All right, no doubt about it. So, through 3 weeks, and great info on the opening numbers for week 4. How's it been from a handle perspective and where the players have been coming at you? How do things stand on your side of the counter?
It's been very good, and we're happy. And the only misfortune so far is teasers have been holding up. The favorites have been winning enough. So we need a few more upsets, and everything will be great.
That's always the big one on a Sunday, right? Where you're looking at the scores as the early games wrap up, and you go, oh, there it is. That's the one that put a smile on the book's face. I mean, teasers, parlay, that one took everybody out.
Right. And there's been a lot of games, as there are every season, where both teams are getting there with the money on the teaser. So, that's you have your normal Sunday, and that either decides if it's a very good Sunday or a mediocre Sunday.
Jack, it's always great information. We got 3 in the cookie jar. Looking ahead to week 4. Always appreciate your time.
My pleasure. Thank you, Brian.
Jack from Bookmaker. There it is, the advanced look and the opening numbers from Bookmaker for week 4 of the NFL.
Betmaker, let's make some money tonight.
Well, that's the Betmaker Show for now. We publish multiple times each week. We'd like to thank you for listening, and if you liked what you heard, please take a moment to leave a rating and review, or subscribe to our show feed, or share our show with a friend or two and help us grow the show. We very much appreciate it. Visit us on the web at betmaker.com. And reminder to sign up for the newsletter. Thanks to our engineer, Darren Vandermolen, and producer, Mike Gallivan. The Betmaker Show is a production of Cardinal Marketing Incorporated. Betmaker is a registered trademark. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or other use of this content without the express written consent of Cardinal Marketing Incorporated is strictly prohibited.
The handicapping and sports odds information contained on this podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Please confirm the wagering regulations in your jurisdiction, as they vary from state to state, province to province, and country to country. Using this information to contravene any law or statute is prohibited. The podcast is not associated with, nor is it endorsed by any professional or collegiate league, association, or team. This podcast does not target and is not intended for an audience under the age of 18. If you think that you have a gambling addiction, stop this podcast now and please seek help.
Gambling and betting on sports is a form of entertainment and should be about having a good time. But when done excessively, it may negatively affect other areas of a person's life, such as their physical and mental health, school or work performance, finances, and or interpersonal relationships. At Betmaker.com and the Betmaker Show, we're concerned about the addiction that gambling may cause, and for this reason, we encourage everyone to practice responsible gambling, an approach to gambling that helps you ensure that it remains an enjoyable activity. Here are the main principles of responsible gambling. Don't think of gambling as a way to make money. Always gamble with money that you can afford to lose. Set limits and stick to them. Never chase losses. Don't gamble when you're depressed or upset, and create a healthy balance. Always be aware of how much time you spend gambling or thinking about gambling. And do not allow gambling to cause you to miss out on time with family and friends or time spent on other activities you enjoy. By following these guidelines, gambling can be a good time and great entertainment. If you feel at any time that your gambling is taking away from important areas of your life, is causing you stress or depression, or is leading to financial losses that are beyond your control, please reach out for help. Learn more at responsiblegambling.org.